Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive with yours truly. You guys sent in a ton of stuff about autism in women, and seems like there's some really unique challenges that don't get talked about enough.
Yeah.
This whole masking thing, especially, it feels like a huge deal when it comes to understanding why autism in women can be so easily missed.
Yeah, you're definitely onto something there. One of the big takeaways from all this research is that autism can look really different in women than it does in men. It's not about saying one's harder than the other or anything, but to give the right support, we've got to recognize all those different ways autism can show up.
Totally. So let's dive into this whole masking thing a little deeper. When I hear masking, I kind of think of someone just trying to fit in. But it's got to be way more than just being a little shy,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine being dropped right into a foreign film without subtitles. You're constantly trying to decode these social cues that other people might not even realize they're giving off. Then you adjust your whole behavior to try and blend in. That's the reality for many women with autism. They're doing all this mental gymnastics just to navigate everyday interactions.
Wow, that sounds seriously exhausting. And it's not like just feeling a little awkward at a party. I mean, the research you sent, it sounds like it takes a real toll.
Absolutely. It's like running a marathon every single day. And eventually your body's going to start to feel it. That constant pressure to mask, to be someone you're not, it can really damage mental health. There's tons of research linking this directly to higher rates of anxiety, depression, even burnout in autistic women. They're trying to function in a world that wasn't designed with their needs in mind. And that takes a toll for sure.
It's almost like they're being punished for just trying to fit in, which is just wrong. And if they're that good at blending in, it makes sense that autism is often missed, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Masking is a huge reason for those missed or delayed diagnoses, especially in women. There was actually one study you sent, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, this woman wasn't diagnosed until she's in her 50s. Can you imagine? For decades, she just thought something was wrong with her. But she was so good at masking that nobody, not even her doctors, picked up on it.
That's heartbreaking, really. I mean, we're talking years, sometimes decades of going without the support and understanding they need. They're just struggling in silence.
Exactly. And that just shows how crucial it is to have better awareness, not just in our communities, but within the medical field too. We can't keep relying on these outdated, stereotypical images of what autism looks like. We have to actually listen to what women are telling us about their experiences.
That's a good point. This is all starting to make way more sense. But I'm also really interested in these different ways autism can show up in women, especially since you mentioned misinterpretations. You sent over some research talking about unique symptoms and how easily they can get misread. Can you break that down a bit?
Of course. So for the longest time, autism research was basically all about boys and men. So naturally, the way we diagnose and even just think about autism, it's all kind of skewed towards those male typical expressions.
So it's like we're working with this really limited definition, which is obviously going to create blind spots.
Mhm.
What are some examples of how those symptoms might show up differently in women?
Well, take special interests, for example. With boys, you often see those classic, intense fixations on things like trains or dinosaurs,
Mhm.
right? And girls can be into that stuff too, but their interests might also be more in line with what we expect from girls: animals, books, music. So even if they're experiencing those interests with that same autistic intensity, it doesn't necessarily raise the same flags.
So the passion is just as strong, but it might not get noticed because it fits into those boxes we created in our heads.
Exactly. And then there's the whole social piece. When people think of autism, they often think about those difficulties in social situations. But in women, those difficulties can be misinterpreted as just being shy, being an introvert, or even just having anxiety. They might really crave connection, but struggle with those social nuances in a way that doesn't scream autism.
It's like we're almost conditioned to overlook those signs in women. Like we have this unconscious bias about what autism is supposed to look like.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And on top of all that, we haven't even touched on the societal expectations that women face on top of everything else. It adds this whole other layer of complexity to what they're already dealing with.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like they're fighting a battle on two fronts. They're dealing with these inherent challenges of autism while trying to live up to these completely unrealistic standards of what it means to be a woman.
Right, and those expectations often clash with the needs of someone with autism. There's this pressure to be socially adept, to be caregivers, to be everything to everyone. But many autistic women, they thrive on routine, sensory regulation, having that quiet time to recharge.
Which sounds like a recipe for burnout, honestly. Talk about a vicious cycle.
Exactly. And this is where I think it's so important to change the conversation. We've talked a lot about the challenges, but women with autism have amazing strengths to offer as well.
Yeah, it's like we need to hit the reset button on this whole conversation. Instead of focusing on what people with autism can't do, let's talk about all the amazing things they bring to the table, especially when we're talking about women with autism. They have so much to offer.
Right. Focusing on strengths is key. And honestly, the research you shared, it really drives that point home. We're talking incredible attention to detail, amazing observation skills, this strong sense of justice. I mean, these are invaluable traits.
For real.
Yeah.
I remember one article mentioned how that attention to detail makes them incredible problem solvers, particularly in fields that are all about spotting patterns or inconsistencies. It's like
Right.
they can see the things that most of us miss completely.
Exactly. They might approach problems differently, but those different approaches often lead to some truly innovative solutions. And it's not just their cognitive strengths either. Lots of autistic women are also deeply empathetic and compassionate individuals. They just experience the world so intensely, and that translates into this really profound capacity for empathy.
It's like their sensitivity becomes a superpower. Instead of viewing it as a weakness or something that needs to be fixed, we should be celebrating that.
100%. Neurodiversity isn't a flaw, it's just a different way of experiencing and interacting with the world. And honestly, when we create space for that neurodiversity, we all benefit from the unique perspectives and talents that autistic people bring.
You know, one thing that really struck me in all this research was the importance of listening to and actually believing women with autism. It seems so obvious, right? But you get the sense that their voices often get drowned out in all the noise.
Yeah, it's true. For too long, the conversation about autism has been controlled by people who don't actually experience it firsthand.
Yeah.
We need to be amplifying the voices of autistic women, listening to their stories, and valuing those lived experiences.
Because those experiences, they hold so many valuable insights.
Yeah.
And those insights can help us create a more inclusive and supportive world for everyone. But it's not just about awareness, right? We have to take action.
Absolutely. And a huge part of taking action is providing support that's actually tailored to individual needs. One size fits all just doesn't cut it here. It's about understanding the specific needs of women with autism, whether it's sensory sensitivities, social anxiety, those challenges with executive functioning, and then actually giving them the tools and accommodations they need to thrive.
So things like creating sensory-friendly environments, being flexible with work arrangements, providing access to therapy or support groups designed specifically for women with autism.
Mm.
Those are all so important.
Totally. It's about recognizing that those struggles are real and valid, and that with the right kind of support, they can absolutely live full and independent lives on their own terms. It's about empowerment.
And that starts with ditching that deficit-based model of autism, right? It's something you mentioned earlier, and it really stuck with me. For too long, we've focused on what's wrong, what people with autism can't do. It's time to focus on what they can do.
I couldn't agree more. We can't keep looking at autism as something to be fixed or cured. We need to embrace it as a different way of being, a different way of thinking, feeling, interacting with the world.
It's about embracing neurodiversity as a whole,
Yeah.
recognizing that there's no single blueprint for how a brain should be wired.
Exactly. When we embrace neurodiversity, we're creating a richer, more vibrant, more innovative society. Because when everyone feels seen and valued for who they are, everyone benefits.
It's about celebrating those differences, not trying to erase them. Which brings me to something you touched on earlier. Women with autism are not a monolith. What did you mean by that?
It's so crucial to remember that every single person on the autism spectrum is an individual, right? They have their own unique personalities, passions, interests, dreams, just like anyone else. Autism might influence how they see and interact with the world, but it doesn't define who they are as people.
So while there are those shared experiences, those common challenges we've talked about, we can't make sweeping generalizations.
Yeah.
One person's experience with autism is going to be completely different from another's.
Exactly. And that's why that personalized support is so crucial. We can't just slap a label on someone and think we know everything about them or what they need.
We have to treat each person as the unique individual they are, recognize their autonomy, and meet them where they're at.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We have so much we can learn from the autistic community, and it all starts with approaching each other with curiosity, empathy, and a willingness to really listen and learn.
I feel like my brain's doing backflips after all that.
Hmm.
Seriously, this deep dive has been such an eye-opener. It really drives home how much we still don't know and how crucial it is that we make space for these voices to be heard.
Absolutely. It's one thing to talk about it, but we got to go beyond just awareness, right? We need to be taking action. We need a world that doesn't just accept neurodiversity, but celebrates it, values it, sees it as an asset.
100%. So for our listeners who are like, okay, I'm fired up, where do we go from here? What's the next step on this journey? What else can they explore?
Well, this is going to sound right up your alley, knowing you in this audience, but have you ever heard of double empathy?
Rings a bell, but refresh my memory.
Okay, so it challenges this idea, you know how people talk about autistic individuals lacking empathy? Well, double empathy suggests that maybe it's not about lacking empathy, but more like a breakdown in mutual understanding. Like both neurotypical and neurodivergent people, they might struggle to really grasp each other's communication styles and perspectives.
Wow. That is fascinating. It's like we're trying to have a conversation, but with totally different dictionaries, right?
Yeah.
No wonder things get lost in translation sometimes.
Exactly. And the really cool thing is when we start understanding this concept of double empathy, it helps bridge that gap. It helps us create more meaningful connections because we're starting from a place of understanding, not judgment.
Double empathy.
Okay.
Okay, I am adding that to my list of things to dive deeper into for sure. It's a good reminder that expanding our understanding of the world and embracing all those differences, that's what makes life so rich and interesting, right?
It really does. Every single person has something unique to offer.
I couldn't agree more. And that is a wrap on another deep dive. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be back next time with more food for thought. Until then, keep those amazing conversations going.